So if you watched our previous episode, you'll know that we completely overhauled and upgraded Morgan's S15 brakes. And you're probably wondering to yourself, did it do any better or worse? Well, we have the hard numbers, the hard facts, and we're going to tell you today how much better or worse Morgan's S15 was at stopping. So if you have been sleeping under a rock or you haven't watched our previous video, we upgraded the Morgan's braking system on his S15 with new pads, new rotors, and new hubs and bearings. Today's the day we're giving you the numbers. We're going to let you know how much of an improvement there actually was. So yeah, we'll run the brief montage of us
fandangling and...
Yes, fandangling. But as a baseline, we did run the test to see how much better off it was. Before we run into the numbers, we'll have a few people and keen-eye people in the comments rattle off, hey, it wasn't the same temperature. It was 1 degree different. The car each time was cold. It's on a private road, about 500 meters from where we live. So the brakes would have been almost identical in temperature. The only limitation that we will concede is that Morgan, he is human. He can't apply the exact amount of force every single time for every single run on the brakes. So there is an element of human error there for the stats. But apart from that, it was pretty much, we got rid of all the variables we could. We didn't basically just set up 2 cones on the side of the road and a big long tape measure. So we've got the information here. So on the first run, Morgan, so we're doing from 80 kilometers an hour to zero.
And I think we did 4 runs.
Yep.
Mainly so we can average it.
Yeah. You know. See what's happening with the brakes as they get a bit hotter, how they perform. It's also worth mentioning the brakes that were on Morgan's S15 when we did the baseline test, relatively new, the cheap alternative that you buy at your Super Cheap Auto or your local auto parts store. So it's not performance based. So this would be a really good test to see whether or not it is worth forking out a little bit more money, which
I think
is not the case in this case.
It is actually not the case. I actually found, because I forked out a bit on my rear rotors and pads, and turns out the Deleos was actually a lot cheaper for the fronts, which you'd think would be more expensive.
Bigger rotors, bigger pads.
Yeah, really affordable actually.
Yeah, so awesome. This is the same, if not cheaper, than what you can get at your local Super Cheap. So we are not sponsored, or we didn't get free parts. We paid for the Deleos rotors and pads, the same prices that everyone else will. So there is no favoritism here. The numbers is what we measured, what we found out. In terms of installation, you can check out our previous video. We went into a bit more detail about the ease of use and actually installing the parts. It went like a breeze. But without further ado, first run from 80 kilometers an hour to zero was 35.1 meters, which I thought was pretty bad.
Yeah, well,
when you think about it, it's like almost two basketball court lengths from 80 Ks, I believe. I think a basketball court's about 20 something meters.
Yeah, so
a basketball court
1.5 maybe.
So 35.1 meters. Now, obviously at the time we didn't really know how good that was. Second run, 32.1 meters. And interestingly, that's when we started smelling the brakes.
Yeah.
So that's when Morgan yelled out for the car. I don't know if you can see it in the footage, but he's like, hey, I can smell them. Yeah, and even as I walked up to the car, I was like, oof, okay, yep. Yeah. So only after the second hard brake. Run 3, 32.8, so a little bit longer distance, about half a meter or so longer than the second run. Now again, Morgan's only human, so that's probably down to human error, but the fourth and final run on the stock setup was 31 meters. So the interesting things to point out with the stock run is the spread. So our first run compared to the last run was about 4 meters difference as the brakes were heating up. Once they start to get to temperature, you can see in runs 2, 3, and 4, it's around about 1 meter to 2 meters difference. So it's getting a little bit narrower, the brakes are getting better. But yeah, by then the brakes were hot, were squealing, were smelly. Yeah, and you also said that the car was moving around a lot.
Yeah, I noticed it was kind of tracking a bit, quite a fair bit.
So that could be alignment based.
Yeah.
It's maybe not so much the brakes, but that was there. Then, after the upgrade, so this blew me away. I was sitting on the side of the road. You can probably hear me yell some profanity when the first one happened. I deliberately didn't tell Morgan because I think he would have got, I don't know, psyched out and then throw off the whole run. So I didn't tell him how much better it was. But the first run, 27.6 meters. So immediately 8 meters better off, which is a very long distance when it's the same rotor diameter and same pad contact patch. It was all the same. So it's just better materials, better design, and already we're 8 meters ahead.
And I think it's important to note that was the first run. So it was cold.
Yeah, so
and it blew all the other.
Yeah, so it blew the best that the stock setup did by about 3 to 4 meters, which is insane. Yeah. It didn't stop there, however. The second run, 26.5 meters. So again, another meter off completely. Third run, 27 meters dead. Morgan did though let me know that he wasn't doing 80, he was doing about 84-ish.
You can probably tell on the GoPro footage inside the cabin, you can see my speedo. Yeah,
it was a little bit faster and only half a meter further. So take that with what you will. If he was doing 80 Ks on the dot, I think it would have been much closer. And then the final one, 27.6, again, same as the first. And by that point, I think Morgan was just getting psyched out by seeing how close the cones were.
I got to be honest, going 80 kilometers and seeing, the start point of the cones and then where I'm actually stopping, I don't know how the car was even doing it. It's surprising.
Some side notes with the upgraded brakes. No brake smell at all.
Not a single,
Not one smell at all. So the brakes after the 4 runs, no smell at all, which the, we'll say stock ones, the ones we started with, noticeable smell after just the second run. Also, didn't seem as squirrely.
No, it seemed
a lot more consistent.
Yeah, it was definitely more controllable, I think.
Yeah.
There was still a little bit, so I think it is partly alignment,
suspension setup, that kind of thing.
And also I noticed as well, getting to the, when I'm almost standstill, the ABS is actually starting to kick in.
Yeah, so also with the stock ones, we weren't hitting ABS yet. No. Whereas with the upgraded brakes, I think that is where we were finding the limit of the tyres. And the tyres are not crap tyres, they're Bridgestone RE003s, plenty of tread, quite new. So yeah, it was interesting that we were starting to find the upper limit of the tyre. If we had a better tyre, man, the meters would have been even further down. So yeah, overall thoughts though on the Delios pads, how do they feel compared to the last one?
Awesome. They feel great. They really do. Nice
and grabby. Obviously I haven't driven the car, so this is just from Morgan's anecdotes, but and overall we'll do the math and put it up on screen, but on average far outperformed the stock variants. Also the grouping itself was between 1 meter or 2, whereas the stock ones it was about 5 meters or 4 or 5 meters. So the consistency as well, and this again is on cold brakes. So obviously as the brakes heat up, they're going to get better and better, but there is going to be a point of diminishing return where they're going to get too hot and they're going to start to fade. We'd need really a track to test that. Can't really test that around here in our local area. But if you're thinking from an enthusiast point of view, you've jumped in your car, you're taking a nice trip up Mount Tamborine, if you're local here to Brisbane, then this is the kind of test that you're going to find out with your rotors. They're going to be not completely heated up. You really don't get those kind of temperatures unless you're on a track. So, your opinion?
Just love them.
Yeah. Brilliant. And the same, if not cheaper, than what you can get at an auto parts store, which is unbelievable. And it's Australian made and company based here in Brisbane. Awesome. Yeah, can't speak higher praises on it. And again, not affiliated with Delios. Their product's just really good. And I believe, was it no warping?
I think so. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So potentially, don't quote me on that, but I believe that was mentioned to us. They don't warp. And if they do, yeah. Well, I guess we'll find out, because Morgan is probably going to go to the track, and or if he doesn't, I'll take him in the A45 and show him what a real car can do.
Yeah, rightio.
Anyway, if you're still watching with us, thanks heaps. If you haven't already, check out our website, projectb.store. I'm still repping it. Morgan, not so much. Grab a shirt, we'll throw in a free sticker if they're still available. Until then, we'll see you in the next Project B video.